Let's talk about something positive today. We hear every day about the new cases and deaths due to COVID-19 around us and around the world. Different governments and different politicians are giving out different solutions to this problem. The most creative being this one.
Corona go! Corona go! Go Corona! Go Corona! Corona go!
But on a serious note, let's talk about something positive which happened in the middle of this chaos. How some countries have handled this crisis so well. What did they do to handle it, and what can you and I learn from it? So let's start. So let's talk about this East Asian country, which although after high number of cases in phase 1, has led by an example that with proper health infrastructure and public support, anything can be achieved. If you still haven't recognized, this is South Korea. The total number of cases in the country skyrocketed in phase 1, but after implementation of effective policies and huge public support, the active number of cases every day have been sharply declining after 15th March. The total number of deaths curve is also flattened and the total number of deaths are still under 300. So how is South Korea setting an example for rest of the world? It is following what is called the 3T model, which includes testing, tracking, and trust. While testing helps in detecting the virus and minimizing the spread, tracing helps in containing the virus, and it is very important for any government to build the trust between the government and the citizens. And South Korea has been successfully implementing this model. Let's talk about the robust public health response that the government has received from the citizens. And Korea's strategy of targeted testing and aggressive contact tracing has been held up as a successful example on how to contain the virus, even as countries like India and US have been slow to adopt it. Partly, they have also done well as a society because they are used to wearing face masks and using hand sanitizer on a daily basis, a type of readiness that is hard to replicate. Okay, so let's discuss the free smartphone app that relayed SMS alerts, and this is very similar to what we have seen as Arogya Setu app in India. It used to update the national and the local government websites that have been tracking the number of cases. Next is the drive-through and the walk-through facilities that have been delivering quick results, and this has garnered praise from all over the world. In a drive-through facility, the passengers are not required to get out of the car, and the test is done in 10 minutes, and the results are usually sent to the person in a day's time. South Korea's hospitals have also introduced a phone booth style testing facility that allows medical staff to examine patients safely and swiftly. This testing booth includes a partition through which patients can consult with medical professionals who then takes a sample through an arm's length, and no contact is there between the patient and the medical staff.
एकदम इन्होंने वक्त बदल दिया, जज्बात बदल दिए, जिंदगी बदल दी.
Let's discuss another success story of an Asian country which shares borders with China and where the first case in the country was recorded in late January when a Chinese man arrived in the country to visit his son. But still, the total number of cases in the country are not more than 350, and almost 80% of people have been recovered. The country is Vietnam, and not just about the number of cases, but the country has recorded zero deaths till now. There are many reasons to this success, but the first would be the implementation of effective travel restrictions. The government restricted the entry of flights from China in late January after the first case was reported, and from the rest of the world in early February, even when other countries were not planning about that. The next would be mandatory quarantine and strict lockdown. And Vietnam went into strict 14-day quarantine for the entire nation, and people were allowed to go out only once in a day to buy essential stuffs. They also started producing domestic testing kits, and this point is very interesting because Vietnam is a developing country and they have limited foreign reserves. But the country started producing the testing kits that costed them less than $25, and this showed results in 90 minutes. This kit was so popular that even USA and countries in Europe started importing this. Now, Vietnam also has a history of dealing with such virus. An example would be the 2003 three SARS outbreak which happened in Asia, in which countries like China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore and Vietnam had to suffer. Vietnam still had the least number of cases and there were zero deaths reported in the country, which we can see in the case of COVID-19 as well. So next in the list is a country who is going to host the T20 Men's World Cup this year and is the smallest continent in the world. But with over a population of 25 million people, it has recorded more than 7,000 cases and the recovery rate has been more than 90%. The country is Australia. Now the curve for total cases has almost flattened for the country and even the total number of deaths stand at 100 and this curve has also flattened. To count the reasons for the success for Australia, I think self-isolation for 14 days for all the travelers arriving in the country, even before lockdown, was a major step. And this started after 29th of March, where all travelers were expected to be quarantined for at least 14 days, and they could travel back home only after the quarantine period was over. The next reason was formation of a national cabinet by the government of Australia, which included the Prime Minister himself, the territory chief ministers, and all the state premiers, who were designed to allow and pool their resources, coordinate the responses within the overlapping jurisdiction, and provide a clear and a consistent message to the people from various leaderships. Now, this garnered praise from all across the country because the national cabinet consisted members from both the parties, the ruling and the opposition. I think India needs to learn a good lesson here that keeping political battles aside during a global pandemic should be a priority. Let's talk about the country that never faced a lockdown, has seen almost zero locally transmitted cases in a while, which has given away 17 million masks to people like you and me. And the world doesn't know much about this country that has managed to fix the problem all of us are looking to fix. Let's talk about Taiwan. Now, we all get fascinated with countries like India, the US, China, France, and Germany, but Taiwan is undiscovered. And the craziest part is that it is located right next to the epicenter of the virus, almost 100 kilometers away from China. The country has seen more than 440 cases, out of which 90% people have recovered, and has recorded only 7 deaths. Taiwan is helping all of us. It has donated 1 million masks to India already. Children never stopped going to school, the economy never stopped, and they control the situation so well that even the sports events are still happening, but without audiences. Now, the prime factor of this success was the state of constant readiness to the threat of such emerging diseases. Taiwan saw an outbreak in 2003 when SARS was an epidemic and saw almost 73 deaths and more than 300 cases. It was successful in building health infrastructure and to keep it as a priority. The country saw no lockdown and there was no economic crash. And now the people of Taiwan are living their lives just as most of us would want to live right now.
मेरे पास कोई अल्फाज नहीं है मुझे माफ कर दे आप लोग सारे मुझे छुट्टी दे दे मैं इस दुनिया से छुट्टी चाहता हूं आप
To conclude today's video, let's talk about the lessons you and I can learn from it. To be successful, any government in this world requires public support and trust from the people of the country. We'll all have to rise above the political hate and the politics that is going around in the world and between opposition parties and ruling parties during the times of a pandemic. It is rightly said that the best that any government can do after this pandemic is to start preparing for the next one. And that can only happen by building proper health infrastructure. At this moment, the poor people need cash in hand more than any emotional support or empathy. So the least we can do is that we can support poor people around us. The government needs to have a setup mechanism for agile decision making. We saw in the video that any government that was successful had a reason that they made decisions on time and correct. In a world where we can be anything, let's decide to be empathetic and kind to each other. This is it for today's video. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, share it the right information with your friends, and subscribe to our channel.